Here you'd find one 8-barrel pom-pom on either side. They're neat, compact weapons, very mobile. Operated rather like a bomber's gun turret and controlled by a joystick hand control in order to turn quickly on any target in any direction. Deadly too. Death to dive bombers. Streams of explosive shells going up every minute of firing.
The Pom-Pom was 8 barrels. It fired 120 rounds per minute. It was water and air cooled. It had a range of 1,000 yards. It had a gun layer, a trainer and a captain of the gun. And it also had interrupter levers, able seamen or boys that worked at the interrupter levers. Well, what it meant by the interrupter levers, it's possible to, when you're firing the 8 barrels of the Pom-Pom, if you want to reserve your ammunition, the captain of the gun can say, close 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 interrupter levers. So what you'd do, you'd push your interrupter lever in, and that would stop that particular gun from firing, you see. So it's quite possible in an air attack to save your ammunition.
The whole sky is split open by a withering fire from the anti-aircraft guns. Deafening cracks of high-angle guns mingle with the staccato thunder of pom-poms.
You had either an 8-barrel a pom-pom or a 4-barrel pom-pom, which we called the piano thing, because they'd go pum 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 pum. They were in rows of 4. The crew were a layer, a trainer, and a fire, and a one that controlled the trigger. You had ammunition loaders, which were they'd keep loading. There were 5, I think 5 or so in each thing. They'd load them in, so you'd be firing them all. They wouldn't all go at the same time. They were going at the same time, but not together. I mean, no 2 would go at the same time.
But were they accurate?
No, the idea of them was to put up a blanket fire, really. I mean, you aimed at whatever you were trying to hit, but the idea was to put up a blanket fire, really. We used to fire at drogues, but we never hit very much, I don't think. We might hit it occasionally, but nothing to say you were actually aiming at the darn thing.
Alternately, you know, you get one fire and then this other one. They wouldn't have to fire all together, because otherwise they'd shoot over the side. They had to be fired like alternately. And they would. There's 8-barrel ones, but I never fired an 8-barrel. They were on the battleships and things like that. But they were terrific, apparently. But they were noisy, man. Oh, they were noisy. I was what they call the layer. There was one. I had to do the laying of the gun, and there was another bloke had to do the gun, swinging the gun round. But I used to do the up and down part.
But the men set about their perilous enterprise, and as the bombers came over in waves, put up a terrific screen of fire as bombs fell all about them.
What I was allocated the Pom-Pom deck as a loader. Well, when the Pom-Pom went off, when it was in action, you used to feed the belts into the 4 guns. Each gun had a separate, ammunition tray. And that was your job, keep feeding that belt going in from a ready use locker. It's like a iron coffin. And they used to send it up from the magazines. And they used to automatically be put in the iron coffin, and you just picked the belt up and clipped it on.
Here is a demonstration tracer projectile. Burning composition in its base is ignited when the gun fires, and burns long enough to show the part of the projectile that fighting ranges.
I was put on the Pom-Pom. he just got the belts of 14, and he had like a rack on the pom-pom, and he'd just load it onto the rack, and then he'd get another 14 in the clip, and just put it on the N1, and that's how he kept doing it, 14 at a time, and he just keep loading it that way. As I say, there was four able seamen doing that to keep the 8 guns going.
And with their anti-flash gear and helmets clamped on, the gun crews fought off attack after attack.
I was on the loading at first, and then later on I become the layer. Oh, it was heavy going. You had to have your wits about you, because you had to make sure you had the right amount of ammunition in each tray, so that one gun wouldn't run out. And it was fast. You had to really be quick. It was a good job I was fit, because you had to. There was one big locker between the two pom-poms, the port and starboard, you see, and that supplied both of us, that locker. And as I say, it fired so quick, you really had to be on your toes to keep it manned. With it firing 120 rounds per minute, a belt was only 14. There was only 14 rounds on a belt. So you had to put them on and clip the belt on the N1. So it kept them going to keep them, the ammunition loaders, keeping it going. So to save ammunition like that, you could use 4 guns and keep topping them up, and then change 4 guns over again by pulling the interrupter levers out and let them fire, and pull the other ones in to keep reloading.
We found too that we had problems with the pom-pom. We had a 4-barreled, that's a 2-pounder pom-pom on there. And one of the problems on that, because one can well imagine how many rounds we were firing, and one of the problems with this was, of course, we had cases which separate. That is, a case meaning that the pom-pom ammunition is supplied in a belt, and one belts up all. The belting up is a process whereby the ammunition is inserted in these metal links, if you like, and it's a kind of thing which one is familiar with. You see these, the kind of thing you see on television today, what one might say in Bosnia, you see them going with strings of this around their shoulders, of smaller ammunition, of course. But anyway, the problem with our pom-pom was that in pulling one of these rounds out of the links to put it into the chamber to fire, the ammunition would separate. That is, the brass half, which contained the cordite, would be detached from the shell itself. And of course, what would happen then, that it would mean that you would feed this brass thing, or try to feed this brass thing, into the chamber to fire, and it became a mangled brass mass of metal, and it caused us untold problems, this. Another problem too, firing so many rounds, was the heating of the barrels, because the pom-poms are water-cooled barrels, and there were corks in the front of these things, and of course, obviously, you would have, before you bring in the mountings up to readiness, obviously, as you go to sea, everything is all ready for action. But when you're actually in action, and the water cooled becomes very much hot water in there, and of course, it's like the spout of a kettle discharging. This cork would pop out, and the water then would flood out of this. And I try to get over this by, of course, easing what is known as the gland, if you like, around the barrel to prevent this happening. But, of course, the thing was then, of course, if you loosen it too much, then, of course, the water would leak through the gland.
found, of course, when we reported the various divisions, I was picked out to be an AA gunner, anti-aircraft gunner, and I thought, that's better. That sounds all right. It started off in the first place when we picked up at the gunnery school. Then we were given strong lectures about this and how serious it is being a gunner. There was lectures on the types of ammunition we would be handling, you know, and you can't just treat it willy-nilly. And you went through all these instructions, and they went on, and then you graduated up then to Pom-Poms, all the guns, 20mm. In the classroom, you learnt all about the types of shells and what you must avoid doing and what you must do, and you mustn't stand them on their ends, you know, in case you stand on something a bit sharp. Well, you were picked out on the gun crews for various jobs. You were taught all the jobs on, but on the Pom-Poms there was 1, 2, 3, there was about 4, 5 on that. And aircraft recognition, I was terrible at that.
Now, what was your problem with that?
To me, that was all aeroplanes. When there was bombers, fighters, I hadn't got a clue. But you used to have silhouettes of them, you know, on the ceiling, just silhouettes of these on this dome. And they were all black. They had no markings on at all. And they'd say, what's that? And I'd say, how the hell do I know? It's aeroplane. I hadn't got a clue what they were. And they used to give you books on all this. And books, coloured books, all with, you know, some were black and white, some were in colour, of the different types of Japanese aircraft, American aircraft, English aircraft, French aircraft. And it was most confusing to me. They all looked the same to me. The only thing I recognised were the engines. They'd either got 2 engines, 1 engine, or 4. But aircraft recognition was terrible for me. I couldn't do anything. When we come to have the test, you know, I was a right failure at that time. The instructor used to say, if there's any aircraft about, ask somebody else if it's one of ours, will you? Don't bloody shoot at it, you know.
The call to action stations brings gun crews to their posts as enemy aircraft come in to deliver their first torpedo and dive bombing attack. The curtain goes up on an epic drama of the seas when the convoy...
Always shoot ahead of everything, yeah. Always shoot ahead of everything. And they used to say, in your mind, you have to estimate the speed of it, you know. And it was impossible, that was to estimate, you know, for a young lad, to estimate the speed of an aircraft and the speed of the trajectory going out there, you know. But you got to learn that, you know, if you kept it in front, you weren't too bad. The instructors wouldn't shout at you. But if you was firing behind the aircraft, that was a different thing.
Like a hunter firing at ducks in flight. The hunter must judge his lead and aim ahead of the duck if he is to hit it.
Remote control everything, even the big guns, our guns and all, they all work from a central control unit. As that turned, so the guns would follow. Only when we were doing it manually, you know, like we had a new gun sight come out that we just pointed it at the nose of the aircraft, and it would actually work out the aim, what we call the aim off on it, and you didn't have to do anything. Just get that little cross on the front of the aircraft, and it would get it dead center. But when you were doing it with the old type sight, you had to try and work out how fast the aircraft was going, and fire so far in front of it. By the time the shell got to it, it would be, you know. But with this special sight, it did all that, worked out all that for you.
You will remember from your eye shooting training that the gun must be swung rapidly to keep pace with the target, and that the aim off required increases all the time.
When I first went on that ship, she had Pom-Pom directors. So this was a brand new thing. This was a gyroscopic sight. Come very well known later on in the war, but in them days it was brand new. And they never had them on the guns. They had, we had 2 directors to direct the Pom-Poms. You know what the Pom-Poms are, multiple Pom-Poms, 2-pounder guns. And one of the problems they had, because everybody was new to this, was the gyro rate unit, called it a GRU, used to be a joystick inside like kind of a rubber, and when you unlocked the gyro, it used to spin. So when you put the sight on the aircraft, you had twin wires, the idea was to keep the twin wires on the nose of the aircraft, and it allowed for the aim off. You always got to fire in front of an aircraft, obviously, but it allowed for all that. You see, this is what it was all about. But it was so touchy. Yeah, if you moved it a little bit quick, it used to black out because the gyro used to fall over. So you've got a spinning top, if you like, and if you try to move it too quick, it just collapse. So you used to have to lock it, unlock it again, and then start all over. You just black out the screen, then on it to come on again, and so on. So I was chosen for a job as the gyro rate unit because being a boy, they reckon I had a woman's touch, let's put it that way. I was only a young lad. So I was just underneath the bridge in this position. We had a layer, a trainer, like you'd have on a gun. I'd be gyro rate unit, and then there was a captain. He was the man who decided to, he used to be able to electrically fire the pom-poms from that position, like you can in a director. But generally speaking, what he'd done is sent a message down to the guns, and they'd followed pointers. And they were in them days, they weren't power driven. You had to push them around by hand, these 4-barrel pom-poms, and then they used to keep the two, as long as they had the 2 pointers in line, in theory you'd hit the aircraft. And that's what the only trouble was, it was so sensitive, this gear, that Q turret, that's the top turret, when it trained right round, we could nearly touch the barrels. Then one day we had, it wasn't very early on actually, we had a premature fire. In other words, a lot of flame comes out before the shell. And coming to our position, it blew all the lot up. So they'd done away with them then, because they were too sensitive to be used in that position. They were used later on. Yanks used them more than what we did, actually, because they were expensive. Just put them on the guns, on the Oricans and that, so you could look at them. They weren't successful, I don't think so, because of the... well, certainly when the Yanks used them, because what the Yanks used to do, you know, they were bomb happy in a way, and when they pressed the trigger, they kept it pressed all the time. Consequently, when you're firing any gun, particularly ACAC guns, the smoke, you can't see much of the smoke if you keep on firing all the time, and certainly the vibration, all it could probably do was get it on, press the trigger, then I wouldn't see anymore. So they were a bit of a waste of time, really. We use the eye shooting sights, what they call a 300-knot ring sight, so you had to allow the aim off yourself. In your mind, you had to decide how quick the aircraft was going, the angle, and allow for it, which was the ace.
Mindful! By engaging it fiercely with your whole mind bent on the job, in spite of all that you did, the blighter got away with it. Not enough aim off or wrong wind allowance, perhaps. If only, you say, I could have told where my shots were missing, I'd have brought him down easily.
We were on patrol, and we'd seen these minesweepers getting sunk ahead of us. Now, up till then, I'd never seen a human torpedo. I knew what the challenge ones was with 2 men on. And it'd be about dawn, it'd be. And we could see these survivors coming towards us. And I had my earphones on, and they were waving and shouting. So I turned around to the lads and I said, what is happening there? And he said, there's a human torpedo amongst them. So I looked, and then I seen this. It was just a perspex dome. That's all you could see amongst them. And you could actually see the chap's head and shoulders. And straight away I shouted to the bridge. I told them what I could see. And I said, do not alter course. If you alter course, you're going to give him a target to hit. I said, while we're going straight into him, he can't. I said, and I can hit him without hitting any of the survivors. Can I have permission to fire a short burst? And he said yes. So I fired a short burst and then stopped. And I could see, as he was coming nearer, he was over to one side. Definitely killed him and that. And he went right down our starboard side. I actually seen him going down. And as we turned, he started sinking. And this leading torpedo man, he was a West Country lad, I knew him very well, a one-badge bloke like myself. He set a shallow depth yards right away and blew it up. Because with it only just being below the surface, it was dangerous. You know, it'd be like hitting a mine, wouldn't it? So he blew it up. And the amazing thing was, when everything had settled down, you know what we seen on the surface? A square rubber lifebelt. He must have had that. That must have been in the human torpedo. And that's the only thing we found. Just a square. Where ours was around our lifebelt. This was a square one. Yeah. That's the only thing we've seen on the surface.
Air attacks, well, we knew that we knew we were going to get air attacks at some stage as soon as you saw the Fokker-Wulfs come around that used to circle the convoy way out on the horizon in daylight. And of course we had no aircraft or anything then. We had we didn't have an aircraft carrier until later on. But this thing used to just fly around the convoy, sending out its messages of what course we were, what the convoy consisted of, and then we knew that we were going to meet it. We were going to get attacked by something, usually by torpedo bombers. A lot of noise, an awful lot of firing. I mean, the convoy would be firing. Every ship in the convoy would be firing. Everything to put up a blanket. Again, a blanket screen of explosives, if you will, in front of whatever was there in front of us. I mean, it was just a matter of firing. Probably nothing but just firing in the general direction of where the aircraft was coming in. But they'd be coming in from all sides. So we would look after one side of the convoy. Our other escorts would look after the other side. So you'd have a blanket going right round the convoy.
Did the pom-pom shells explode at a certain height, or did they just explode if they hit something?
No, they exploded at a certain height.
And so you'd set them so they'd go.
Well, they were already set. They were set to that. We didn't do any setting on those. They just exploded.
Do you know what height about it was?
No, I don't. Not really. You could see them exploding. You would see all the puffs of burst as you fired them. Probably a range, I don't know at that stage. I mean, aircraft is not travelling very fast. Not the speed of jets that they are today. They were just engines. So they were only doing 200 to 300 knots probably nothing more than that. So I suppose the range would be, well, I don't suppose we were interested in much of the range.
You were just
as long as we didn't want them inside, we were just firing to keep them away. Hoping that we put enough stuff in front of a pilot to make him say, well, I'm not going through that lot.
And did you ever hit anything? Or do you remember?
I don't remember. There was so much going on. We did bring planes down, but who was accredited to them would be a bit naughty, I'm afraid, with the amount of stuff that was going up at them.
So you just, you couldn't tell?
You couldn't really tell who got what. At least we were doing something, even if we didn't hit anything. I felt as if at least I was doing something, rather than sort of being down below and not doing anything, I suppose. At least I was hitting back, I think, was my impression. That, Buggy, I'm hitting at you, come and get me.